All right, good afternoon, everybody. Um, this is a fun Zoom session that we've done a bunch for already today, or already since students have been admitted. So let me introduce myself and we can get going. And thank you for your time uh, with us today. I think everybody's microphones are on mute, but as people get used to Zoom sessions, if everybody could leave them on mute to eliminate the extra noise in the background. We're recording that session for those who may not be able to attend right on time. Throughout this session, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to submit them during the chat feature, and I'll answer them as we go through. Let me introduce myself. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is John Young. I'm the Dean of Admissions here at Hobart and William Smith, and certainly can appreciate how most of you are in this challenging situation at this moment in time with May 1st right around the corner. Students are trying to make college decisions at a time where normally they would be visiting campus. We'd be rolling out the red carpet here for people to see the place and kick the tires for themselves, so to speak. But obviously, given where we are, that's not possible. So by trying to bring as much of this to all of you in a virtual way, I think is a great way for you to see more. I know I've communicated with many of you via email and met some of you when I was traveling on the road or when you visited campus. And if it helps, I've got a son at home who's trying to make the same types of decisions you all are at this moment in time, and it's a challenge. But the purpose of this session is for you to get to know us a little bit better and to answer any questions you may have about Hobart and William Smith. I've gotten a couple of questions that have been submitted before we started these sessions that I thought I would answer just to help set the table for how this session should go. So to me, one of the questions I received, I'll read it to you. How does Hobart and William Smith stand out from other colleges, especially other small schools in the Northeast that we're also considering? And to me, there are three things about HWS that I'd really like to highlight here. Because from my perspective, if you're considering us and other small liberal arts colleges, in the global scheme, we're a whole lot more alike than we are different. There are certain things that are traditionally hallmarks of a small liberal arts education, and I think we have them all here. We have the small class sizes. We have the opportunity to build relationships with faculty and staff that will last a lifetime. I think, to me, that's one of the core essences of a small liberal arts college. We have terrific opportunities for people to study abroad. We have opportunities for students to do research. We're going to have great co-curricular and leadership opportunities. I think those are all hallmarks of a great small liberal arts college. But there are some things that I think are pretty distinctive about how we deliver education at HWS. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is our curriculum, the academic component to life here at the colleges. And there are two pretty distinct features of our curriculum that really help students navigate this place. First, most schools like us have what are known as distribution requirements. We want you to go out and see a bunch of different courses in a bunch of different areas. The way our faculty manage that, though, is a little bit different. They took a step back from traditional distribution requirements, which would have you take 2 courses in this division, a course in that department or that division. Our faculty took a step back from that and said, look, it's not that critically important to us that every Hobart and William Smith student take a math class. That's not what's so vital. But we do want all of our students to have quantitative reasoning skills before they graduate. That's what's important to us. We don't need every student to take an English class, but we do want every student to be a good communicator, a good writer before they leave HWS. So our faculty developed what are known as our 8 goals, essentially 8 skills that we want our students to have before they graduate from HWS. And each student here works with their faculty advisor, their academic advisor, to make sure they've addressed each one of those 8 goals before they graduate. And the way you might do it, your son or daughter might do it, would be entirely different than the way I might do it because of my academic interests. So there's a lot of freedom in terms of the specific courses that you take, Yet we have the assurance that our students built those skills before they leave, because they have to take a course that satisfies each one of those 8 goals. So that's one feature of the curriculum. The other is that every student has to have 2 areas of concentration at Hobart and William Smith. They can't just graduate from here with a major. You need at least a major and a minor. And now we have over 30% of our students double majoring. So if there's more than one subject that a student wants to pursue at HWS, that's a pretty popular and common and easy thing to do. In fact, we require it. I think one of the reasons that that works at HWS is our departments, our academic departments here, are really in one of 2 camps. They are either a traditional disciplinary liberal arts major, things like history and economics and physics and French and chemistry and political science, or they're an interdisciplinary liberal arts major, which are a little more modern, but certainly fit in well with what we're doing here, because they pull from traditional liberal arts programs. So very popular interdisciplinary major and minor at HWS is international relations. It's its own world here, but it pulls from history, political science, economics, foreign language, all together into one department. Environmental studies, very popular at HWS, pulling from biology, from political science, from economics, all together in one world. Architecture, not many schools our size have architecture to the extent that we do. Why is it interdisciplinary? Because we'll not just teach you about the design and science of building buildings, but you'll take environmental architecture courses. You'll take historic preservation classes. You'll take public policy courses that will teach you how to work with local governments and building codes to get your buildings built. So you can see most of our students have these neat combinations of majors and minors that cross disciplines and makes them really interesting people. We work on a straight semester system here. Students take 4 courses each semester, 4 courses in the fall, 4 courses in the spring, 32 courses over their lifetime at HWS. So typically, one of my favorite advisors on campus is a chemistry professor, Professor DeDennis, and Christine advises her students when they're choosing their courses and they're choosing their 4 courses each semester. She will say, 3 you need, 1 for fun. Choose 3 courses that will count towards your major, towards your minor, towards one of those 8 goals. And 1 course because you always wanted to give art history a try, or see what's going on in the philosophy department. I think that allows students to explore a range of different things, yet make sure they're progressing towards their degree. So that's what I want to talk about academically. Let me talk a little bit about the community, because I think that's another really distinctive part of Hobart and William Smith. A lot of that has to do with the people who are here. At a lot of small liberal arts colleges, again, as I mentioned, you're going to get to build terrific relationships. It's hard to fall through the cracks. We have a saying at HWS that says you'll be known for 4 years here, and I think that's very true. But one of the things I love about the colleges is that we put systems in place to ensure that you build those relationships. We don't just rely on our size to make that happen. Let's put some systems in place to make sure that students connect with those faculty, staff members who can be their mentors and guides, especially as they're new students, to make the transition from high school to college. And one of the best examples I have for that is the system that we use to put you in your first semester courses your first year at the colleges. At a lot of schools, I think it's one of the most challenging semesters for students to choose their courses. They're new to all this. They're coming from high school where they took English, history, science, math, and foreign language, and then threw a couple of electives in. And then you get to college and wait a minute, there's all these different courses to choose from. They're from tons of different disciplines where maybe I haven't ever taken a course. How do I actually choose these? Well, like a lot of schools, we have a computer system where you can log in, and here are the 450 different courses that are available to first-year students. And at most schools, you check them off, put them in some form of a priority, and some computer algorithm would spit out your course schedule, and off you go. And when we first got our fun computer system, we did it exactly the same way. But what we found is in an entering class of about 575 students, that we were making about 350 course changes over orientation. Students were logging in and choosing their courses. They just weren't choosing very well. They were overloading themselves on one side, too many science and math courses, or too many reading courses, not enough distribution to use more than one side of your brain. So about 10 years ago, we switched things up. And now what happens is our students still go in the computer system and they rank order their classes, but then that list is sent to your first year dean. There'll be two deans who are working with the entering students this year, Joe Mink and Kelly Payne. And then in admissions, we go over and meet with your first year deans and turn over the files of the incoming students to the deans and tell them everything we've gotten to know about our students through admissions interviews or high school visits, college fairs, through reading their essays and teacher recommendations, looking at transcripts. Students also fill out a lot of survey information that will help the deans get to know them a little bit better. Not only talking about academic goals, but what are their strengths and their weaknesses. Then what your dean does is pull all that information together, aggregates it all. And then he or she will put you in your first year seminar, which is one of the courses you take in the fall of your first year, and one other course, maybe two. So your dean is actually putting your schedule together for you. And then you meet with your academic advisor, who is also the person who's teaching your first year seminar, and choose that last course, the two of you. I think it's a much more efficient system. It helps our deans get to know students even before they arrived. It helps your advisor get to know you before you've even arrived. You've built relationships with at least two adults on this campus and you haven't even set foot on the place yet. So I think it gives you a good sense of how community is important to us. It takes a ton of time. It's all our deans do in the months of May and June, is start putting them in those courses. But as a result, instead of making those 350 course changes we made the old way, last year we made less than 25. So I think students are getting the courses that they want and building those relationships at the same time. Another big part, obviously, of the community is Geneva, where we're located, New York, which is a terrific place. It's a town of about 13,000 people. For those of you who haven't visited, we're right on the north shore of Seneca Lake, which is the largest of the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. It's about a 40-mile long lake that is on the backside of campus. You can see it behind me. That's the boathouse for our sailing team. And the lake is a huge part of who we are, and the city of Geneva is a huge part of who we are. It's been a great host to the colleges for almost 200 years now. And I think students love the fact that they can go a quarter mile up the road into town and grab a burger or some other meal, go to the Smith Opera House and see a really cool art film or speaker. But everything in the center of town, right up the street, is all local mom and pop. No chains are there. You get to know the people behind the counter. You're babysitting their kids and walking their dogs, and they're coming to your concerts and sporting events. There's a hominess to Geneva right up the street, and a diversity to it as well. There's pretty much every type of food you want. It's a much more diverse community in upstate New York than I ever would have expected. But the other nice part is if you go out the backside of campus to the west, you've got Dunkin' Donuts and Walmart and the Eightplex movie theater and Tim Hortons. And for those of you not from this part of the world, Wegmans, the supermarket, is a very big, important part of our world. And to have that right behind campus is pretty easy. So you've kind of got two sides to campus that you can take advantage of as a student, and it allows people to take a little break from campus yet not miss anything that's going on there. So community is a big part of who we are. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of points of distinction is how we prepare students for life after the colleges. If there is a criticism of small liberal arts colleges, it's that students come to a place like us and they study philosophy for 4 years. And what are you going to do with that? How does that lead to life after college? And I think it's actually one of the true strengths of HWS, is helping people think about how what they're learning in the classroom is going to be an asset to an organization, a graduate school, company, wherever it is our students end up going. And we want to spend a lot of time with them, helping them figure that out, helping them figure out how to put a resume together to show that. So our career services program here is one of the best in the country. And I think one of the reasons it works so well is that we've got a system that starts when they're first year students and they have no clue what it is that they want to do, let alone what they want to major in, right? That's the first step. Let's help them start to figure that out. And last year we had over 90% of the first year class have a one-on-one meeting with somebody in career services. Let's start early, let's start often, because then people can start doing some exploration in a way that doesn't take a ton of time, but keeps things moving along. We have a great program in between semesters at Hobart and William Smith, where students can go with one of our career service counselors or one of our faculty members to different locations in the country. We sent a group this winter to Washington, D.C. We sent a group to Boston. We sent a group to New York City. We sent a group to Los Angeles. And they just bounced from alum's office to office to office to office for a couple of days and came back with a much better sense of what they wanted to do. If somebody's interested in a career in communications or media, go with Professor Holly to Los Angeles for a couple of days, and you can go spend some time with Brad Falchuk, who's one of our alums, one of the producers of dozens of television shows, and go spend the day with him. And if you like it, that's terrific. Now we've got an idea of what you want to do. But if you didn't like it, that's okay. Go with another one of our alums to follow her career in advertising. And if you like that, great, we can move in that direction. So for a little bit of a time commitment for students, they can get exposed to a lot of different things. And then we know we want to get them into an internship. We know that for over 70% of our graduates, their first job post Hobart and William Smith was directly linked to an internship they had while they were at Hobart and William Smith. So it's a critical piece to have on your resume and start building those experiences. So much so that we decided to put funding behind it. So if you follow our career services program pathways and complete all the steps there, we will guarantee you a stipend for your internship or research if it's unpaid. We had too many students get that really cool internship that they could really help build their resume, but I can't afford to give up my summer job to go do that internship. Well, let's get you a stipend so you can afford to go do that. So it's really helped our participation rate for our students taking advantage of internships, and it's certainly helped the outcomes when people are going off to graduation. All right, so those are the things I wanted to talk about in terms of some points of distinction. The other question that I've received many, many times over the last couple of weeks, and certainly want to share with all of you, is to ask about, talk about how Hobart and William Smith has adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic, and certainly nothing anybody anticipated here. We moved our academic semester to remote learning on March 13th, and unlike a lot of places, that was the Friday that our spring break started. And so we gave our faculty a week to pivot, spend their spring break adapting their in-person learning to remote learning so that we could start up with classes the Monday after spring break. And without a doubt, it has been a challenge, but I've been so impressed with the way our faculty and our students have been flexible, nimble, adapted to all of this. We had to make some adjustments in terms of our grading systems and policies and how that was going to work. We've had to put a lot of our student affairs staff on call in different ways than they traditionally have been working. We have a group on campus that's been working to get students emergency aid if they need that for things at home. Our counseling center has had to move to a remote teleconferencing model. So we've been really busy in a lot of different ways, but I think we're managing pretty well. Things are coming close to the end of the last day of classes here next week. We'll mark that, and then final exams will kick in from there. So I don't think this is anyone's ideal scenario, but I've been really impressed with the way the colleges have managed it. As far as moving forward, we formed a task force on campus to really look at how we're going to manage the fall semester. And our president has asked that task force to really investigate a couple different opportunities as to how this might work for us. And obviously we've got to pay attention to what our local and state officials are going to tell us about when it's safe to return. And if so, what steps do we need to take would need to take place so that we could do that in a way that's going to ensure the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. So we're paying really close attention to that. But one of the times that we are blessed with our location is this one. We certainly have a lot of room on our campus to spread out. Unlike some other colleges, we have 54 different buildings where we house students on our campus. So it's pretty easy to keep students spread out here if something like that should be required. You know, one of the things that people are talking about is okay, if classes resume in the fall in person, it's likely that there'll be caps on the number of people who could be in one space. Well, again, one of the blessings of being a smaller school where we are is most of our classes are small to begin with, so we wouldn't have to worry about some of this. We could take up a lot of different space to manage that. So we've got a group that's working on that, and I think we're committed as an institution to try to return to in-person learning as quickly as we can, but obviously have to pay attention to the safety guidelines that get put out for our students. So we're hopeful, we're encouraged that things will work. We're still planning to open on time in August, but we'll keep everybody apprised to what happens that way. All right, so those were the questions I wanted to answer beforehand. And then as I mentioned, everybody, please put in your questions in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer those as we go along. The first question I got is, do we offer credit for AP courses? The answer is yes. If students get 4 or 5s on the AP exams, we'll give people course credit for those exams. Sometimes that will result in the student being put into a more upper level course more quickly. Other times it's just a credit you have that you can use in your back pocket whenever you want. We know that obviously the nature of AP exams are changing this year, so we wish everybody the best of luck with those, but we've worked with our faculty to reaffirm that we'll give credit for 4s and 5s on those exams. We do also offer credit for IB courses. We give credit for 5s, 6s, and 7s on IB exams, and we know that this year those exams are canceled, so that when we receive the anticipated grades for those classes, the faculty are asked to give us an anticipated grade on that exam. If that anticipated grade is a 5, 6, or 7, we'll give students course credit for that as well. So for those of you who are finishing up courses in the AP and IB world, best of luck to you. This is a challenge, and we appreciate everybody being flexible and moving forward that way. There's a question about first-year housing and how it's connected to first-year seminars. Let me talk a little bit about first-year housing, how we put that together. So we really feel very strongly that the first-year seminar should really be a cornerstone of the transition from high school to college for Hobart and William Smith students. So that first-year seminar is taught by one of our faculty members, and they're capped at 15 students. We try to keep those classes small, and that professor becomes your advisor for your first 2 years here until you declare a major. There are about 45 different seminars that are offered by faculty members from all over the colleges. If you go to our admitted student webpage and scroll down to the very bottom, there is a link where you can see the course descriptions of all the first-year seminars that will be taught this fall. I encourage any student, any family to go look at them. They're amazing. At least if I were a student, I'd want to take a bunch of them, but unfortunately you can only choose one. And I would let that course description dictate which seminars you choose. I think sometimes people get too hung up on potential majors. They start looking at things way too in depth when it comes to their first year seminar. Choose a topic that sounds interesting to you. I think that's a much better guide to choosing your first year seminar. They don't count towards your major, so I wouldn't overthink it that way. Choose a seminar that sounds exciting. You'll be surrounded by people who have chosen the same seminar for the same reason. What we try to do is house all of our first year seminar students together in the same residence space. Somebody in your seminar probably won't be your roommate, but they'll be living on the same floor or upstairs, downstairs from you. The thought being you can get together for study groups, you can prepare for tests and exams in the lounge if you want to do that. It's an easy way to build community. So that's how first year housing is primarily done for us. It's for students who live in seminars. We put them in certain buildings. There are 2 large residence halls on our campus where the majority of the first year students live. Jackson Potter Reese is one of those residence halls, and Sherrill Hall is the other. They're right next door to each other. So if you want to be with a big group of first year students, certainly keep that in mind. The other first year students are spread out in some other residence halls across campus, and those are usually mixed in with upper class students. So some people prefer the big brother, big sister kind of format, having somebody like that around you. So those are all options that are available to students, but they're certainly tied to your first year seminar primarily. All right, a question about studying abroad. International students have access to do that? Absolutely. International students can study abroad here just like domestic students. All students who are receiving financial aid at the colleges, that financial aid will still apply. to your study abroad program if you do that through Hobart and William Smith. So the vast majority of our students who do study abroad, we have about just over 60% of our students who will study abroad. The vast majority of those students actually will choose one of the Hobart and William Smith study abroad programs that we offer. And most of those are led by our faculty. I think there's some real importance to that. When one of our programs is led by our faculty, number one, the courses that are taught are in our course catalog just like they would be if you were on campus. So they'll get credit at the colleges. You won't be behind for graduation in terms of any credits. And I think by having that faculty member lead your trip, you get exposure to a lot of different things that you may not otherwise. So typically when somebody's going abroad, they're going to take 1 or 2 courses from your Hobart and William Smith faculty member who's leading the trip. And then you'll take 1 or 2 courses at the university that you're tied with, wherever home base might be. If there's something I have to encourage you to do, it's when you think about studying abroad, think big. When I was in college, most study abroad was geared towards a foreign language. If you took French, you went on a study abroad trip to France, and you spent time living with the family and came home fluent, and we have exactly that trip if you want it. It's one of the ones that we have available to our students. But now we have trips that go all over the world, and I would encourage people to be adventurous. I know, at least when I was in your shoes, it never occurred to me to study abroad in Vietnam, but that is one of our most popular study abroad programs at the colleges. So I encourage you to think about that. I think it's most students will go in their junior year. They're semester-long programs. In addition to the traditional study abroad programs, we also have some summer study abroad programs where students can take some quick 4-6 week study abroad experiences to go to different parts of the world. That can work particularly well for student athletes, especially if you play a sport that crosses semesters. If you play basketball, part of your season's in the fall, part of your season's in the spring. It's really hard to take a semester off to go study abroad. You certainly could. We have students who do it, but some don't want to give up part of their season to do that. So the summer programs can work very, very well for those students. One of the questions, though, that I think is great is faculty will influence Hobart and William Smith students. However, do you believe the students also influence the faculty? They influence faculty here all the time. Some of that is in the research that they do. One of the things that I think people think about a liberal arts college saying, well, faculty are there to teach, they're not there to do research. Well, that is true. I think primarily faculty are here to teach, but they have to be doing research to stay current in their field. And all of our faculty use students to help them with that research. So I think it's a great opportunity for students to interact with faculty, carry things a bit further. But they also influence faculty in different ways. At the end of every course, our students will do faculty evaluations and class evaluations to talk about the course, to give feedback on the materials that were used. How are the exams? How are the papers? How are the lectures? And that can influence how faculty approach those courses moving forward. In addition, we're one of the only schools I know where there are 2 students elected to be members of our board of trustees, full voting members of our board of trustees. So when you're on the board of trustees at Hobart and William Smith, you're technically my boss. It's, to me, a great way to influence the direction of the colleges and a bunch of different opportunities. So yes, I think our students have a big influence, not only on individual faculty members at that level, but bigger picture ways in terms of policies and procedures. So students have a large voice here. All right, next question is, when will the orientation website be launched? So everyone who sends their enrollment deposit by the end of the day on May 1st. It is usually shortly that week after. I'm looking at a calendar above my head here, probably midweek around the 6th or the 7th, that we will send students a username and a password to go onto our orientation website. And that will be a home base for our incoming class for the entire summer. That will be where all of the forms you needed are parked, where you choose your courses, where you fill out housing surveys, all through our orientation website. So that's going to be the first thing that you need to look for and think about. Let me encourage you as students, if you decide to come to Hobart and William Smith, when you go to the orientation website, the first thing you should do is start choosing your courses. Once your courses are submitted, Here are my course choices. Here are my favorite options for both first year seminar and my other 3 classes. That's when the deans will start getting to work. It is definitely a first come, first served kind of process when it comes to course selection here. So as soon as you get that username and password, the sooner you go in and start choosing those courses, the more quickly you will get your first choices there. I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle for us. Some people say, oh, it's not due until June, whatever, I'll wait until the very end. That you certainly can. There's no reason that you can't. On the other hand, some of those courses you may choose and submit in June would have been filled in mid-May, and if you had submitted it earlier, you would have gotten your first choices that way. So let me encourage you to do that as quickly as you can when you go onto the orientation website. Next question is about the housing application. Those will certainly be there at the same place. So we require you to live on campus here at Hobart William Smith. So you'll be living here as an incoming first year student. And so the forms that help with roommate selection are on the orientation website. So you'll fill it out there. Question, have there been discussions about delaying the fall semester and moving courses online? I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, that we have to explore all the possibilities that way. We would rather not move online if we don't have to, but we certainly have to pay attention to all the guidelines around safety and what's going to make most sense for our staff and our students. Our hope is to open in person, and if the county health commissioner that speaks to our director of student life every 3 days, and the state's giving any guidance, I think we're all fairly optimistic. We may have to delay the start of the fall semester, so we're scheduled to begin classes here on August 24th. But if we got word, hypothetically, I'm making up dates, that on September 15th, we could open in person without as many restrictions, maybe we'd stall the start of the semester until then to allow people to open in person and have more flexibility here. And we just continue the semester out a little further than we had originally planned. We're a school that has a large break between the first and the second semester. Students end exams here around the 16th, 17th of December and don't begin again until the 20th of January. So there's a lot of room in between those semesters if we had to extend the start date for the fall, where we could push that a little bit further. So I think all the possibilities are on the table, as long as it's going to involve keeping our students and faculty safe. So that's got to drive a lot of what we do. Do you do language study abroad trip if you don't major or minor in the language? Certainly, all of our study abroad trips are run by a academic department, by a faculty member from that department, but it can change from year to year. So for example, the faculty member leading the Australia study group, 1 year might be a biologist, and next year it could be an economist. So there's not necessarily one department that runs it consistently. On most of our study abroad trips, about half the people who go on that trip are majoring in the subject of the faculty member who leads the trip, and the other half are majoring in academic departments across the colleges. So there's not one pattern or trend that says all the French majors go to France. Some might, maybe half of them will, but the others are going to be spread out in different groups. When will the fall first year seminars be announced? They're as I mentioned at the bottom of the admitted student page. I think Craig put a link out there in the chat so you can link on it. But I think to me it's a great opportunity for you to and we still add some, but it's a great opportunity for you to see what possibilities are out there, because I think they're terrific seminars. This is a good question. What were your first impressions of both the campus and the people when you arrived at the colleges for the first time? You've given me permission to bore you, so I'm going to bore you for a minute. When I arrived at the colleges for the very first time, I started working here in 2005, so I've been here for almost 15 years. So my anniversary is in July. And at the time, my 2 kids were exceedingly young, and I'd worked in college admissions for about 15 years at different places prior to arriving here. And when the position opened up, I knew it was something I was interested in. My wife grew up 10 miles down the road from here, so I always loved the area and knew it was a great spot. But I had 2 young kids, and I knew they were going to be growing up here. This is what was going to be their home, what they were going to see. And so what was really important to me when I walked around this campus and were meeting students was, are these the college students that I want to be my own kids' role models? Are these the students that I want babysitting my kids and coaching my kids and tutoring my kids? It was critically important to me that I was choosing a community where I was going to be excited for my own kids to be running around campus with these other college students. So that was the big sort of linchpin part of my professional decision to come work here. And it was very clear to me as soon as my first meeting was in the admissions office, which if you've been here, you know, is across the street from the main campus on the lake. And when I started walking around campus, the first place I went was to the dining hall. And as I was walking around and the student who was taking me around was introducing me to his friends and professors around campus, I knew this was going to be a great place. And it has held true. There's no doubt about it. My two kids have grown up here. They're now 16 and 17 years old. And pretty much every coach they've had has been a Hobart and William Smith student. We have a great program here called America Reads, where Hobart and William Smith students go into the elementary schools and tutor kids on reading skills. And they have an equivalent program in math called America Counts. Both of my kids had Hobart and William Smith students as their America Reads partners when they were in first and second grade, and they were some of the coolest people. That they certainly I think liked the Hobart and William Smith students better than their parents sometimes. So it was a big part in my choice to come to work here, and it has certainly held true. Add to that, as I mentioned, having this big lake as a backdrop, I think it makes the place so naturally beautiful, and I think our students love the fact that when things get tense, they can look out the dorm room window and see the lake, and it calms things down. It's a good thing. All right. If courses are moved online for the fall, what would it mean for students' expenses and commitments? Let me talk about that. We've talked a lot about that as an institution. So when we moved to remote learning, the semester on campus technically ended on March 13th, and then the students have been learning at home or wherever they are. We have about 150 students still on campus because this is the best place for them to be, but the rest of our students are at home. So we credited students' accounts for room and board for the rest of the semester. So it ended up about 50% of their room and board costs were credited back to them. If we needed to go to remote learning for the fall, I know we would credit back some portion of tuition, because tuition goes for much more than just classes, right? There's access to space and people on campus that you may not have access to if you're not here. So to me, that's an important piece, and I'm sure the same would be true for room and board. And obviously we'd have to be flexible with students wanting to defer their enrollment for a semester. We're certainly prepared if we have to go to online classes, remote learning for the fall. There'll be some current students who might choose to take the semester off, and they'll start up in January. So we're gonna have to be flexible and nimble that way. All right. Do you regularly hear impactful and influential conversations between students around campus? That's a really neat question. I'll give you a perfect example of something like that that's going to happen this evening. We have our student government meeting is on Tuesday evenings, and even though we haven't been on campus, they still have those meetings remotely on Tuesday evenings at 8 o'clock. They've asked me to come to that meeting tonight because they like engaging with administrators, faculty, and staff. They usually have some really good questions whenever I've gone to interact with students. So they not only talk about it among themselves, they're ready to question us about all that stuff too. So we get excited about that. To me, when students are critically evaluating their own academic and social experience and want to talk about it, we're up for that as an institution. I think our student body, just to characterize them from a personality perspective, I think, well, here, we're getting down to it. Here it's the end of April. So let me give you my impressions here. I think most of our student body is smarter than they even know when they show up here. They might have great grades, great test scores, all those things in high school that led us to admit them to the colleges. But when they get here, there's something that happens that I find really intriguing and exciting. They get a faculty member who takes them under their wing, or a subject that they just get excited about, and it starts to influence more of their life than they might have been used to in high school. It's not that you do your homework and you close your books and it's done. I think it goes well beyond that, to students then working with their faculty members to do research that comes up with an idea for an honors project or a thesis their senior year. So I think there's a lot that goes on outside of the classroom that is just a continuation of the academic experience that they're having. Not to mention that you're meeting people from entirely different parts of the world, all over the world, all over the United States. And people like to get to know them better and enjoy that difference. So it's a big part of who we are. All right, if the fall semester begins remotely, will it affect international student financial aid packages? I can't think how it would. I'm sure we'd have to talk about that institutionally. I don't think it would influence their financial aid package, but we'd certainly have to talk about how people are refunded for that. So and this is true for anything, if anybody has a question that I didn't answer completely or something that you need more information about, please send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat box when we're done, so don't ever hesitate to reach out and get in touch. All right, can you tell us about a personal experience, possibly between you and a student, that really made you realize what it means to be a member of this community? Oh, I got tons of them, tons of them. Let me give you one of the very first ones that I can remember. We had a student, one of my favorites, who was an international student, tore his labrum, was on the soccer team, tore his labrum in his shoulder, had to have surgery for that. And obviously his family wasn't from the United States, couldn't fly out to be with him when that happened. And he was a student worker in our office. We were talking about it. He needed to recover. So I lived right behind campus, spent 2 nights in my house when he was done with surgery before he came back to campus. So he got to know my family pretty well, got to know my kids. And so what was really interesting, because I was coming to work during the day, he was sitting at home recovering, and it was over spring break. So my kids were home. My son at the time was graduating from elementary school and was very excited about that. And sure enough, when elementary school graduation came along, who was sitting right there in the audience, but our student who had spent a little time at our house and gotten to know my son, Jake. So to me, there's some really great experiences and great kids here. So I got tons of them. Question about club sports. For us, this is a pretty big deal. So about 80% of the Hobart and William Smith student body played a varsity sport in high school. So what does that mean when they come here? Well, it's only about 30% of our students who play a varsity sport at Hobart and William Smith. But there's a huge chunk of our students who will choose to participate in club sports because you can play against other schools, yet the commitment may not be the same as a varsity sport here. Some of them are exceptionally well organized. Their practices are a well-oiled machine. They've got tons of different tournaments or events that they go to. So things like the ski team is great. They will go to national competitions. I think our ultimate Frisbee team hosts things. Both men's and women's rugby host great events. Ice hockey has a great club sport. Lacrosse is a club sport here. So some of them we have varsity equivalents in. Others are sports that we don't have a varsity program in, but they can be great. They're run by members of our athletic department, so they get a lot of attention. And our student activities group supports them well with financing and rides and things that they need. All right, if you ask 100 current students for their definition of success, how would they answer? That's a really good question. I don't know that like a lot of things, I don't know that I have a universal answer for that. I think some students will view success in purely academic terms. It's about their ability to grow and develop new sets of skills, be more open-minded and willing to accept new ideas, and be more talented in the way that they approach certain things. That would be success for them. Others are looking at this as both a transformational and a transactional experience, in that there's a job I want to get when I leave here. There's a graduate school I want to go to. So success will be measured in that outcome. Other people, it's much more from a social perspective. They want to widen their circle. They're really looking to meet people from different parts of the country with different backgrounds. So I think, heck, if I asked 100 students how they define success, I might have 100 different answers there. They'd probably be grouped in different areas, but I think people come here for a whole lot of different reasons and are looking for very different things out of the colleges. All right, what will advising guidance look like for class registration, especially if done remotely? That's something that we're talking about a lot here. We do a lot of remote advising for the incoming first year class, regardless of the current situation. So after deans will put you in those first 2 courses, then they're going to turn your information over to your first year seminar professor, your academic advisor, and the 2 of you will be in touch with each other before school starts. That's something that traditionally would happen here, and I'm sure it will happen even more often given the current circumstance. So there's a lot of back and forth that happens. And so don't be surprised sometimes when there are questions that pop up about course registration or advising, that a dean or your advisor will pick up the phone and call you unannounced and say, hey, I just want to talk to you about this. So don't be surprised if you see the Hobart William Smith number on your caller ID. That's what it's about. You haven't gotten into trouble yet. Next question, how does Hobart William Smith prepare students for the MCAT? We have a health professions advisory committee here. They did actually a great Zoom session. So let me encourage you to go to the admitted student webpage and check out that Zoom session. We've done over 40 of them now. They're all recorded and available for you to watch out on the admitted student webpage. So if there's a topic that's of specific interest to you, let me encourage you to go take a look at that. So that health professions advisory committee will start working with people when they're first year students. We'll do sessions for them over orientation. Just to make sure people are getting the right courses. And then things really kick into high gear into sophomore and junior year to making sure people are preparing for the MCATs. So we offer a couple different of the test prep programs are available here at the colleges. Most of those, I don't think we've done an in-person one in quite a while. Most students prefer to do those remotely just because they can do them at their own pace and they don't have a specific time of day that they're meeting. That's one of the hardest things to do here is try to schedule something where people have a bunch of different schedules that's going to work for everybody. So when we have the opportunity to do something like MCAT or LSAT prep remotely, that's what we encourage students to do. There's a couple of services that have worked really well with our students that we have access to here on campus. So people will do that a lot during their junior year and then take those exams leading into their senior year so they can get those applications off to graduate school. That Health Professions Advisory Committee is first rate. Scott McPhail, who works with all of those students and he's featured in that Zoom session, gives really good advice. If I had to change one thing about Hobart William Smith, what would it be and why? That's a really, let me answer that question 2 ways. If I can answer it from a physical space size thing here, I think we've got social space that works really well for small groups and really well for huge groups. And we do well to have some more social space that works for in-between groups. I think, you know, if you want to have a group of 50 people, the pub is terrific and we can have whatever type of concert going on there. And if we want to have the whole student body in the field house, that works really well too. It's when you want a group of 600 people together that the spaces can kind of get a little awkward here and there's not as many obvious spots that don't feel like a hotel ballroom. We have a great space in our student center called the Vandervoort Room, which sometimes you feel like you're in a hotel ballroom. It's great. But it's not quite as cozy as some of the other spots we have on campus. So if we had some more intermediate space, I think that would be terrific. The other thing I would do is keep our space just the way it is in terms of Geneva, New York, and being located on the lake. But somehow, if I could move that an hour closer to Boston or New York City, I'd appreciate it. I like being. Right now we're about 5.5 hours away from both of those cities, but if I could cut that down to 4.5 hours, it would make my travel life a lot easier, given what I do for a living. All right, I think I've gotten through all the questions. Please feel free to email me if anything comes up. As I mentioned before, I'm going to put my email address right here in the chat for you to follow up with me directly if things come up. For those of you who are making your final decision this week, it's the 28th. You got a couple of more days to figure that all out. We wish you the best. Obviously, we hope you choose us, but to me, what's most important is that you feel as though you're making the decision where you're going to thrive at that institution. You get the word that we use in admissions a lot is fit. Find a school that's a good fit. I think that's too easy. I think there's a lot of schools out there that are really good fit. And I've gotten to visit hundreds of them over my career. And I like to think that I could fit at tons of them. But there's probably only a handful where I could really thrive, where I could take advantage of everything that there is there to offer, that I could build those relationships, that I could take advantage of the spaces and the opportunities that exist. So don't settle for fit. Make sure that it's going to be a place where you can excel and achieve things that you maybe not even imagine at this point. And I can assure you that we've got a faculty and a staff that are committed to helping our students grow, soar, not just exist and get a degree. We don't consider it success when a student just graduates. We want to make sure they have taken advantage of the place to the full extent of what we offer and feel the full support of Hobart and William Smith. For the parents who are on the call, let me encourage you to do this. We have a lot of data about this generation of students, and this may be hard to believe, but I think this generation of students relies a lot on their parents in terms of advice and really wants them to approve of the choices that they make and feel as though, I think students really want to feel as though parents are supporting their decisions. So this is one of the places where sometimes it's a challenge for me as a parent to keep my mouth shut and let my son and daughter make their own choices and then back them up once they've made them. So come Friday, the 1st, when your son or daughter says, okay, this is the place, this is where I want to be, I think it's critically important for you to say, hey, I'm really proud of you, and that's an absolutely fantastic decision, and we support you 100%, because it means they're going to be a much more successful college student knowing that their family is behind them. Obviously, we want to take good care of them here, and we're going to do our very best. But I think it's absolutely critical that all of our students feel as though their family supported their decision to be here and are behind them all the way. So we wish you luck with all this. Please get in touch if we can answer any questions. And I know everybody's going to end up in fantastic shape come the fall. So please stay healthy, take care of each other, and we look forward to seeing you soon.